Ambassador Zixthar stood in the grand hall of the Galactic Council, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he reviewed his new assignment. After 200 years of diplomatic service, he thought he had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. But this was different. This was humanity's first official introduction to the wider galactic community, and he had been chosen to lead the cultural assessment. The humans had arrived 3 months ago in their modest ships, broadcasting messages of peace and friendship. They seemed eager to learn, quick to smile, and remarkably adaptable. Zixthar had found them charming, if a bit unusual. They were softer than most species, lacking natural armor or weapons. Their technology was clever, but not threatening. Everything about them suggested they would be excellent additions to the council. The council chambers emptied as the other delegates filed out, leaving Zixthar alone with his datapad. High Chancellor Vexener had made the mission clear: study human culture deeply, particularly their entertainment and recreation. For thousands of years, the council had learned that what a species did for fun revealed more about their true nature than any amount of formal diplomacy ever could. Zixthar made his way to the human quarters, where Ambassador Sarah Chun greeted him with a warm handshake. He had learned this was a human gesture of friendship, though the firm grip always surprised him. Humans were stronger than they looked. "Ambassador Zixthar, wonderful to see you," Sarah said, her face forming that peculiar expression humans called a smile. "How can we help you today?" "I am conducting cultural research," Zixthar explained, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into perfect English. "The council wishes to understand human recreation and entertainment. What do your people enjoy doing when they are not working?" Sarah's smile grew wider. "Oh, that's easy. We love so many things. Music, art, sports, games, stories. Would you like to see our entertainment database? We brought extensive files to share with the council." Zixthar's main eyes brightened with enthusiasm. "That would be most helpful." Sarah led him to a comfortable room filled with human furniture. She activated a large display screen and handed him a smaller tablet. "This has access to everything: movies, books, music, games, sports recordings. Feel free to explore. If you have questions, I'm just next door." For the next several hours, Zixthar immersed himself in human culture. He watched something called a romantic comedy and found himself confused by the humor, but touched by the emotions. He listened to classical music that made his sensory tendrils vibrate pleasantly. He read excerpts from human literature about friendship, love, and hope. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Humans valued connection, beauty, and emotional expression. They told stories about overcoming challenges and helping one another. Their sports involved running, jumping, and team cooperation. Nothing concerning it all. Then he stumbled across a category labeled horror. Zixthar tilted his head, confused by the word. His translator struggled for a moment before settling on a definition: entertainment designed to frighten and disturb. He blinked all four eyes in succession, certain there was some mistake. He selected a file at random. The movie began pleasantly enough, with humans in a dwelling, talking and laughing. Then strange things started happening. The music became tense. Dark corridors filled the screen. A creature appeared, something from nightmares, and began hunting the humans. Zixthar watched in growing horror as the humans on screen ran, screamed, and tried desperately to survive. The creature was relentless. The deaths were graphic. The survivors were traumatized. And according to the file information, millions of humans had watched this voluntarily. For entertainment. He selected another file. This one involved humans trapped in a building with infectious creatures that turned other humans into mindless monsters. Again, the same pattern: fear, death, desperate survival. Another film showed an alien invasion where humanity faced extinction. Another portrayed a deadly supernatural entity. Another featured a masked killer stalking teenagers. Zixthar's respiratory system began working overtime. He checked the database statistics. Horror was one of the most popular entertainment genres among humans. They had thousands of years of stories designed specifically to terrify themselves. They paid money to experience fear. They sought it out deliberately. He found something called haunted houses, where humans paid to walk through buildings where actors jumped out to scare them. He discovered extreme haunts, where the fear was so intense the participants had to sign legal waivers. Humans lined up for these experiences. His hands trembled as he scrolled through more files. There were entire festivals dedicated to horror. Humans dressed up as monsters for fun. They told scary stories to their children before sleep. They had created an entire holiday called Halloween, centered around fear and darkness. Sarah knocked on the door, startling him badly. "Just checking in. Finding everything okay?" Zixthar tried to compose himself. "Ambassador Chun, I have a question. This category, horror. Why do humans watch these things?" Sarah laughed, apparently delighted by the question. "Oh, lots of reasons. Some people love the adrenaline rush. Others enjoy the suspense and surprise. It's thrilling, you know? Plus, there's something satisfying about facing fears in a safe environment. Horror movies let us experience danger without real risk." "But the fear is real?" Zixthar asked carefully. "Oh, absolutely," Sarah said. "That's the whole point. The best horror makes your heart race, makes you jump, gives you nightmares. That's how you know it's good." She said this with genuine enthusiasm, smiling the entire time. Zixthar thanked her and waited until she left before returning to his research. His initial confidence was cracking. This was only the beginning of his investigation, when already he sensed something deeply unusual about humanity. What kind of species actively enjoyed being terrified? He filed his preliminary report that evening, noting the discovery, but trying to remain objective. Perhaps horror was an isolated peculiarity, a strange quirk in an otherwise normal species. He had no idea how much worse it would get. Zixthar couldn't sleep that night. His species needed very little rest, but even that small amount eluded him. Images from the human horror films kept flashing through his mind. He kept thinking about Ambassador Chun's smile when she described being frightened as entertainment. The next morning, he returned to the human database with new determination. If horror was just one strange aspect of human culture, surely the rest would be more reasonable. He decided to investigate their sports next. The first file showed something called football. Zixthar watched as large humans in protective armor ran at each other at full speed, colliding with tremendous force. Bodies hit the ground hard. The crowd roared with approval. Players limped off the field, only to be replaced by fresh ones who repeated the same violent collisions. He checked the injury statistics. Broken bones were common. Something called concussions happened regularly. Some players suffered permanent damage. And yet, stadiums held tens of thousands of spectators who cheered every brutal impact. Confused, he moved to another sport. Boxing showed two humans in a ring, hitting each other in the face and body until one couldn't continue. Mixed martial arts was even more intense, with fighters using every part of their body as a weapon. Ice hockey featured more armored humans, slamming into walls and each other while chasing a small disc across frozen water. Even their gentler sports carried an edge. Soccer players ran for hours without stopping, pushing their bodies to exhaustion. Basketball players landed wrong and destroyed their knees, yet kept playing. Gymnasts performed moves that seemed designed to break necks if executed incorrectly. Zixthar discovered something called extreme sports, and his translator had to pause to find adequate words. Humans jumped out of aircraft for fun. falling through the sky before opening parachutes at the last possible moment. They climbed sheer cliff faces without ropes, where a single mistake meant death. They threw themselves off bridges attached to elastic cords. They surfed massive waves that could crush them. They dove in the water with creatures called sharks that had rows of sharp teeth. There was a category called motorsports, where humans raced vehicles at speeds that would be fatal in a crash. The database showed plenty of crashes. Humans walked away from destroyed vehicles, laughed, and got into new ones to race again. His research spiral continued. He found something called parkour, where humans ran through cities, jumping between buildings and over obstacles. One wrong move and they would fall stories to the ground. They recorded these activities and shared them with millions of other humans who watched admiringly. Then he discovered their video games. Millions of humans spent hours controlling digital avatars that fought wars, survived apocalypses, and battled monsters. The most popular games involved shooting, strategy combat, or horror survival. Children as young as 10 played games where they eliminated opponents in creative ways. Zixthar pulled up statistics on game preferences. The top sellers across all human cultures featured warfare, survival challenges, or competitive combat. Even games marketed as peaceful often included violence as an option. Humans could play gentle farming simulators, yet chose to spend billions of credits on military shooters and monster hunters. He needed fresh air. Zixthar left the database room and walked through the station's common areas. Near the recreation zone, he spotted a group of young humans. They were playing some kind of game, running and chasing each other. He moved closer to observe. "Tag, you're it," one human child shouted, slapping another on the shoulder before sprinting away. The game seemed innocent enough. One child chased the others, trying to touch them. But then Zixthar noticed another group playing something different. They had divided into two teams and were throwing soft spheres at each other, trying to hit opponents to eliminate them from play. "Great shot, Marcus!" One child yelled after a particularly hard throw knocked another child down. An adult human supervisor noticed Zixthar watching. "They're playing dodgeball," she explained. "Good exercise and teaches reflexes. Though we use soft balls here. Back on Earth, we used to play with harder rubber ones." "The goal is to hit each other?" Zixthar asked. "Exactly. Last team with players standing wins." She said this as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Training children for combat through play, Zixthar returned to his quarters and began reviewing human history files. Warfare had been constant throughout their development. They had spent thousands of years fighting each other with increasingly sophisticated weapons. Only in the last century had they achieved something resembling global peace, and even then, conflicts still erupted regularly. But it was their approach to warfare that disturbed him most. Humans studied it obsessively. They created detailed simulations. They wrote countless books on strategy and tactics. Their military academies were considered prestigious institutions. Even in peacetime, they maintained massive armed forces and conducted regular training exercises. He found records of human philosophy about war. Some of their greatest thinkers had written extensively on the subject. They had sayings like, "Know your enemy," and "The best defense is a good offense." They talked about warfare as an art form. The database showed human movies about war, thousands of them. Unlike horror films where fear was the goal, war movies often portrayed combat as noble, necessary, or even thrilling. Humans made heroes of their warriors. Children played with toy soldiers. Zixthar discovered something particularly disturbing called survival shows. Humans voluntarily went into hostile environments, jungles, deserts, frozen wastelands, with minimal supplies. They filmed themselves struggling to find food and water, building shelters and enduring harsh conditions. Other humans watched these shows and considered the participants entertaining. There were competitions where humans tested survival skills against each other. They were dropped in remote locations and had to make their way back to civilization. They caught and ate insects. They drank their own filtered urine. They built fires in the rain and shelters in the snow, and they smiled while doing it. They called it adventure. Zixtar pulled up more files on human pets. Most species kept small, harmless creatures for companionship. Humans kept animals called dogs, which had descended from pack-hunting predators called wolves. They kept cats, solitary hunters with retractable claws and sharp teeth. Some humans kept reptiles that could inject venom. Others kept large birds with powerful beaks and talons. The most shocking discovery: humans sometimes kept creatures purely because they found them dangerous. Some collectors kept venomous spiders, deadly snakes, or aggressive fish. When asked why, they simply said they found these creatures fascinating. As the station's lights dimmed to simulate nighttime, Zixtar sat in the darkness of his quarters, surrounded by screens displaying human data. Every new piece of information added to a disturbing picture. Humans didn't just tolerate danger and violence. They sought it out. They celebrated it. They made games of it. What kind of species evolved to find joy in fear and pain? More importantly, what did it mean for the galaxy that humanity had been operating in friendly mode this entire time? Zixtar knew he needed to present these findings to the Council. But first, he needed to understand more. The next day, he would interview humans directly. He needed to hear them explain this, in their own words. He suspected their explanations would only make things worse. Zixtar requested a formal meeting with Ambassador Chung and several other humans. He needed to understand the pattern he was seeing. Perhaps there was a reasonable explanation that would make sense of humanity's peculiar preferences. The meeting room was comfortable, designed to accommodate multiple species. 3 humans joined him: Ambassador Chun, a military officer named Colonel Webb, and a cultural liaison named Dr. Patel. They all wore the same friendly expressions humans seemed to favor. "Thank you for meeting with me," Zixtar began, trying to keep his voice steady. "I have been studying human entertainment and recreation. I have questions." "Of course," Dr. Patel said warmly. "What would you like to know?" Zixtar pulled up his datapad. "Horror entertainment. I have reviewed thousands of files. Humans create stories specifically designed to frighten themselves." "Why?" The 3 humans exchanged glances and smiled. "That smile again." "Oh, that's a great question," Dr. Patel said. "Horror serves several purposes. It lets us face our fears in controlled environments. It triggers adrenaline responses, which some people find pleasurable. And there's a social bonding aspect. Experiencing fear together creates connections." "You find the fear itself pleasurable?" Zixtar asked carefully. "Some of us do," Colonel Webb interjected. "I used to love horror movies as a kid. The jump scares, the tension, not knowing what would happen next. Gets the blood pumping." "And your sports," Zixtar continued. "I observed humans deliberately colliding at high speeds, striking each other until one loses consciousness, jumping from aircraft. These activities cause regular injuries and occasional deaths." Ambassador Chun nodded. "True, but we take safety precautions. And yes, there's risk, but that's part of the appeal. Humans have always been drawn to challenges that test our limits. Sports let us push ourselves physically and mentally, even when it causes pain. Especially then," Colonel Webb said. "Some of the best moments in sports come from pushing through pain, overcoming it. Any athlete will tell you that growth happens outside your comfort zone." Zixtar felt his translator struggling with the concept. "You seek discomfort deliberately to achieve growth?" "Exactly," Dr. Patel confirmed. It's a fundamental part of human psychology. We're not built for comfort. We're built for adaptation and challenge. This was worse than Zixthar had feared. Your video games. The most popular ones simulate warfare and survival scenarios. You train your children with these simulations. The humans looked at each other again, this time with slight confusion. I wouldn't call it training exactly, Ambassador Chen said. It's entertainment. Though I suppose there are skill development aspects. Reaction time, strategic thinking, resource management. But why warfare specifically? Why not peaceful cooperation? Colonel Webb leaned forward. Ambassador, those games exist too, but humans are competitive by nature. We evolved that way. For most of our history, the tribes and nations that survived were the ones that could defend themselves and compete for resources. That drive didn't disappear just because we stopped having constant wars. You stopped having wars? Zixthar asked, genuinely surprised. Mostly, Ambassador Chen admitted. We have conflicts, but nothing like our past. The last major global war ended almost 80 years ago. We've learned to channel those competitive instincts into sports, games, and economic competition instead. Dr. Patel added, think of it as controlled outlet for natural drives. Better to fight in a virtual world or on a sports field than on a real battlefield. Zixthar processed this. So the violence in your entertainment is a substitute for actual violence? In a way, yes, Dr. Patel said. Though it's more complex than that. Humans have always told stories about conflict because conflict reveals character. The hero's journey, which appears in cultures across Earth, is fundamentally about facing and overcoming challenges. Often violent challenges, Zixthar noted. Often, yes, Ambassador Chen agreed. Though not always. We have plenty of stories about emotional challenges, intellectual puzzles, and peaceful resolutions too. But action and conflict are universal story elements because they're exciting. They engage us. Colonel Webb spoke up again. Can I ask you something, Ambassador? What does your species do for fun? Zixthar considered the question. We appreciate harmonic sound patterns. We engage in philosophical discussions. We create mathematical art. We meditate in chromatic light pools. That all sounds lovely, Dr. Patel said genuinely. But nothing physical? No competition? No challenges? We have intellectual competitions, debate tournaments, mathematical problem-solving contests, but nothing where you push your physical limits? Nothing that gets your heart rate up. Zixthar realized where this was going. Our species is not built for physical extremes. We evolved on a world with gentle gravity and mild climate. Physical stress is something we avoid, not seek. The three humans nodded, and Zixthar saw understanding dawn on their faces. That's the key difference, Ambassador Chen said softly. Earth is not a gentle world. It has extreme temperatures, dangerous weather, natural disasters, and for most of human evolution, predators that could kill us. We're not physically impressive compared to Earth's other apex predators. We don't have claws, thick hide, or venom. What we have is endurance, intelligence, and adaptability. Colonel Webb continued the thought. We survived by being tougher than we looked, by refusing to give up, by preparing for worst-case scenarios. That's bred into us now. We can't just turn it off because we reach space. Dr. Patel smiled gently at Zixthar. I think I understand your concern. You're wondering if we're dangerous. If our entertainment preferences indicate violent tendencies. Zixthar decided to be honest. Yes, the Council needs to assess how humanity will integrate with galactic civilization. Your preferences are very different from most species we have encountered. That's fair, Ambassador Chen said. Here's how I'd explain it. Yes, humans are capable of violence. Yes, We enjoy competition and challenge. Yes, we find certain fears and dangers thrilling. But we also know the difference between entertainment and reality. We've worked very hard as a species to move past our violent history. We don't want war. We want peace and cooperation. Then why maintain such large military forces? Zixstar asked, pointing to data on his screen. Why continue training for combat if you seek peace? Colonel Webb answered this one. Because we learned the hard way that peace requires strength. Earth's history taught us that unprepared nations become conquered nations. We hope for peace, but we prepare for war. It's an old saying, but it served us well. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, Dr. Patel added. That's very human. Zixstar felt his understanding shifting. Humans weren't simply violent. They were survivalists. Every aspect of their culture, from their entertainment to their military doctrine, was built around preparation and adaptation. What would humanity do? Zixstar asked carefully, if faced with an existential threat? Something that could destroy your species? The three humans fell silent for a moment. Their expressions changed, becoming harder, more focused. Whatever it took to survive, Ambassador Chun said simply. We're very good at surviving. Colonel Webb's smile had disappeared entirely. Every war game, every survival show, every horror movie, every extreme sport, they all teach the same lesson: adapt or die. And humans are really, really good at adapting. Zixstar left the meeting with more information, but less comfort than before. He finally understood humanity's nature, and it terrified him. They were a species forged in constant danger, shaped by thousands of years of warfare and survival, who had somehow managed to build a peaceful civilization despite their instincts. They were choosing peace. But choice implied they could choose something else. Zixstar called for an emergency council session. His report was complete, and the findings needed immediate attention. The Grand Chamber filled with representatives from 43 species, all curious about the urgency. High Chancellor Vexner opened the session. Ambassador Zixstar has requested emergency consultation regarding humanity's cultural assessment. The floor is yours, Ambassador. Zixstar activated the central display, showing clips and data from his research. Honored Council members, I have completed preliminary assessment of human recreational preferences. The findings are deeply concerning. He walked them through everything: the horror entertainment, the violent sports, the war games, the extreme activities. The chamber grew quieter with each revelation. Several delegates made distressed sounds. The Zephyrian representative, whose species communicated through color changes, flashed through warning patterns. They deliberately frighten themselves for pleasure, Zixstar explained. They injure themselves in competitive sports. They simulate warfare in their most popular games. They jump from aircraft, climb mountains without safety equipment, and swim with predatory creatures. This is not aberrant behavior among humans. This is mainstream culture. Councillor Thalrex of the Armored Dominion spoke up. Perhaps they are simply foolish? Many young species take unnecessary risks. No, Zixstar said firmly. I interviewed human representatives. They are not foolish. They are deliberate. Everything they do is calculated preparation. Their entertainment teaches survival skills. Their sports build physical and mental toughness. Their war games develop strategic thinking. Even their horror stories, they explained, help them face fears in controlled environments. High Chancellor Vexner leaned forward. Preparation for what? Anything, Zixstar said quietly. Everything. Humans evolved on what they call a death world. Their planet regularly attempts to kill them through weather, geological events, and predatory fauna. They survived by becoming the most adaptable, most persistent, most prepared species on their world. They haven't stopped preparing just because they reached space. The crystalline consciousness spoke, its voice chiming like bells. This is concerning, but humanity has shown no aggression toward council members. They have been cooperative and friendly. Perhaps you overstate the danger? Before Zixthar could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the station. The emergency broadcast system activated. Attention all personnel. The station is under attack. Hostile forces have breached Sector 7. This is not a drill. Proceed to evacuation points immediately. Chaos erupted in the council chamber. Delegates rushed for exits. Guards appeared, trying to organize the evacuation. Zixthar felt his heart racing. Pirates had been increasing raids on outer stations, but he never expected them to attack a council facility. Through the confusion, Zixthar saw the human delegation moving against the crowd. Instead of fleeing, they were heading toward the danger. "Ambassador Chun," he called out. "Where are you going?" "We must evacuate." Sarah Chun turned, and Zixthar saw something new in her expression. The friendly smile was gone, replaced by sharp focus. Her eyes had changed somehow, becoming more alert, more predatory. "We're going to help defend the station," she said calmly. "Colonel Webb is already coordinating with station security. But you're diplomats, not soldiers." "We're humans," she replied simply. "Every human receives basic combat training in school. More importantly, we've been preparing for scenarios like this our whole lives." Another human, a young attached named Marcus, who Zixthar had thought looked barely adult, spoke up. "I've played through this exact situation in about 50 different games. Breach in Sector 7 means they're trying to access the main reactor. We need to seal the connection corridors and follow them into kill zones." He said this with the same casual tone someone might use to discuss dinner plans. The pirates, according to intel reports, were the scourge of the Outer Rim. They had destroyed stations before. They were known for their brutality and superior numbers. Station security was minimal, designed for policing, not warfare. Zixthar watched in amazement as the humans coordinated. They didn't panic. They didn't hesitate. Colonel Webb appeared on the communication screens, already wearing combat gear that Zixthar hadn't even known they'd brought. "All security personnel. This is Colonel Webb. Recommend defensive positions at junction points, Alpha through Delta. Use the station suppression systems to control their movement. They'll expect us to run. We're not going to run." The humans moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency. Ambassador Chun helped evacuate civilians while simultaneously coordinating defensive positions. Marcus, the young attach, hacked into the station's environmental controls and began sealing sections systematically. "This is just like the Istanbul scenario," he muttered to another human. "Remember, we did this in the Academy simulation. They'll push hard at first, expecting easy victory." Within 20 minutes, the station's defense had transformed. What should have been chaotic evacuation had become organized resistance. The humans had taken charge not through authority, but through sheer competence. Zixthar stayed in the command center, watching displays show the battle developing. The pirates had indeed expected easy victory. They stormed through Sector 7, firing weapons and destroying property. Then they hit the first human defensive position. The pirates had numbers and heavy weapons. The humans had preparation and adaptability. Every corridor became a trap. Every junction point a killing field. The humans used the station's own systems against the invaders, venting atmosphere in some areas, locking doors in others, even triggering fire suppression, systems to blind and disorient attackers. One pirate squad tried to flank through maintenance tunnels. They found Marcus and 2 other young humans waiting for them. The brief firefight ended with the pirates in retreat. Marcus reported the engagement with the same calm voice. 3 hostiles neutralized, 1 wounded and retreating. No friendly casualties. moving to reinforce Junction Delta. The battle lasted 4 hours. By the end, the pirates were in full retreat, having failed to breach any critical systems. Station security, bolstered by human tactics and coordination, had held every major position. The casualties on the defender side were minimal. As the all-clear sounded, Zixthar emerged from the command center to find Ambassador Chun coordinating rescue and recovery operations. She had a small cut on her forehead, but otherwise seemed completely calm. "You fought them off," Zixthar said, still processing what he had witnessed. Sarah smiled. And this time, Zixthar understood what that expression really meant. It wasn't just friendliness. It was confidence. The confidence of a species that knew it could handle whatever came. "We told you," she said gently. "We're really good at surviving. And we're even better when we work together." 1 week later, Zixthar presented his final report to a shaken Galactic Council. The emergency session had fewer attendees than usual. Many delegates were still recovering from the trauma of the attack. "My assessment is complete," Zixthar began. "Humanity is perhaps the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. Not because they are aggressive, but because they are not. They are capable of tremendous violence, but they choose peace. They prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Their entertainment is not a sign of dysfunction. It is training. Their entire culture is built around adaptation and survival." High Chancellor Vexner spoke carefully. "What do you recommend?" "Alliance," Zixthar said firmly. "Strong alliance. Because the alternative is having them as enemies, and I cannot imagine a worse fate. When other species face existential threats, they panic. When humans face existential threats, they adapt. They overcome. They survive. They have been training for worst-case scenarios since childhood, and they call it fun." He pulled up footage from the pirate attack. "During the crisis, while we evacuated in terror, the humans moved toward danger. A young Attach, barely 23 years old, fought off armed pirates and called it similar to a school simulation. Ambassador Chun coordinated defense while helping civilians, never once showing fear. Colonel Webb organized our entire defensive response in minutes. The council watched the footage in silence. The most terrifying part," Zixthar continued, "is that humanity considers this a minor incident. They were not impressed by their own performance. They think this is normal. And perhaps for them, it is. The vote was unanimous. Humanity's status was updated in the council records. They were welcomed as full members and simultaneously marked as a species that should never be provoked. The official classification read, Humanity, Cooperative Apex Survivors. Recommend alliance and friendship. Under no circumstances create hostile relations." Zixthar added one final note to his personal files. "They choose to be gentle. Remember that it is a choice." The galaxy slept less soundly knowing that the friendly humans preparing for every possible disaster called it entertainment. But those who befriended humanity slept more soundly, knowing that if the worst ever came, humans would already have prepared for it and would face it not with fear, but with focused thought after all. They'd probably already played through the scenario in a game somewhere,